Hello, I'm Michael Gigani, and this is Straight Talk with Carrie Lam. Mrs. Lam, thank you very much.
Not at all, Michael.
You're running for Chief Executive along with three other people. Now, you were last here in 2015, April, 2 years ago. Before we start, let's just watch what you said at that time.
Yes. Michael, you asked this question when I appear on your program.
Before.
And I'm giving you the same answer.
Which is?
Which is no.
Now, I asked you that, whether you were going to run for chief executive, and you said, I've asked you many times before, and you've always said no, and that's no. That was 2 years ago. Now, I know, Mrs. Lam, you said that things have changed, because the current chief executive, Siwa Leung, is not running, and therefore, things change quite dramatically. But I want to ask you this. Why is it that if Siwa Leung is running, then you won't run? And if he's not running, then you will run. Do you think you will lose to him? You want to give him respect? What's the real reason?
Well, there are a couple of reasons. First of all is in this term of the government, I was nominated by Mr. Siwa Leung and appointed by the Central People's Government as the Chief Secretary. And the Basic Law does provide for the Chief Executive to serve 2 terms. So if the incumbent Chief Executive wants to run for another term, then it's my personal conviction that I should not compete with him. That's one consideration. But the more important consideration is, for a very long time, I have harbored this aspiration to retire. Because had I not joined the political team, I would be turning 60 in a few months' time. So coming to the end of my term as the Chief Secretary, I should retire and start another life when I am still young and energetic.
So what you're saying, Mrs. Lam, is that if the chief executive, Siwa Leung, was going to run, you thought he should have another term because the Basic Law does allow for 2 terms.
Because in this term of government, I have personally worked with and seen him working very hard. And well, of course, the government has a lot of difficulties, but we do manage to introduce some very good policies. And so it is important, in my view, for those good policies to be continued.
Okay. Now, we don't know who's going to win.
Yeah.
If you win, of course you have got to go to Beijing and see Xi Jinping, right? Now, when you see him, that's if you win, okay? When you see him, how do you think you will explain Hong Kong's divided society to him? Because I'm sure the mainland government is concerned about that. And ideas about what priorities you'll have to fix this broken society.
Well, I would honestly and sincerely reflect the society sentiments to the leaders in the Central People's Government. And I think by now everybody accepts. The reality is, in recent years, we have seen a great deal more dissatisfaction and disconnectivity in society. The people's views tend to be very polarized, and people tend to take positions even without giving ourselves a chance to debate what we are talking about. So I would truly reflect those sentiments. Of course, then I'm sure the leader will ask, what sort of solutions do you have?
What solutions do you have?
Then I have already announced at the rally meeting a few days ago that I would want to introduce a few new sort of styles. One is a new style of governance, which is more people-oriented, more participatory, more inclusive. So it means that in terms of political affiliations, we should embrace people and parties with a political stance, as long as we all believe in the comprehensive execution of one country, 2 systems in accordance with the Basic Law.
Are you then saying that Mr. Siwa Leung did not do this, did not have an inclusive government, did not have enough participation of society? So you're going to have a new form of government that suggests that the existing form of government is not what you want to have?
No, in my view, government's activities or functions comprise 2 main aspects. One is policy. I've just mentioned that this government has implemented several quite reasonable and satisfying policies, like helping the poor people, caring for the elderly, supporting the disadvantaged, and mapping out environmental protection plans as well. But there is another important aspect, which is exclusively the monopoly of the leader, and that is, in our case, the chief executive. That is the style of governance. How do you engage with people, communicate the government's philosophy, and work to the people?
Did he engage well?
Well, it's not for me to comment on individuals, not the CE, not
you
the other contestants and so on. But every person has his own style, which has something to do with their upbringing, their background, their working experience, and so on. That's why the first thing, Michael, the first thing that I have done, which you may not realize yet, I hope you realize, is I try to let people know more about me. Because over the years, people know me as a very efficient, effective official, or even give me the nickname of a good fighter. But there is actually another side of me, which is I hope to portray in front of people. I'm very compassionate. I do have a lot of soft spots, and I really genuinely want Hong Kong to be good.
Okay, now you want Hong Kong to be good. I'm sure all the candidates want the same thing. But the problem you now face, Mrs. Lam, is that you say you will put aside political reforms until society is less divided. But the pan-Democrats have already said they don't support you. Some of them have already said that you are CY number 2. Given that situation, and some of them have said they will give their votes to either John Tsang, one of your rivals, or Judge Wu, the other or one of your rivals. Given that situation, how do you think that if you become chief executive, that in the coming 5 years, you can mend society? If the ball has just started rolling and the pan-Democrats are already saying, no, we don't want you. And there was actually a protest march to your office a few days back. How do you mend society?
How to mend society has been sort of captured in our slogan. It's not just about we connect. It's also about we care, we listen, and we act. Because apart from political issues, there are so many issues in society that are waiting for us to address and tackle and find solutions. And those solutions will only come along through listening to the people and caring for the people, and then put into action. So I would sort of diligently practice what I have shared with people of Hong Kong, that in the next few years I will use a very caring approach, and I will listen attentively to the views of different parties, including people who oppose me during this election campaign, people who are very fixated on their political position. But the important thing that I think I have a track record is to put those things that people want to see happen into action.
Okay, now, before we go on, let me show you another clip of what you said 2 years ago.
Okay. If Hong Kong is not able to move forward in terms of universal suffrage, the consequence will be we are at a standstill.
Now, you said 2 years ago, when we're talking about political reforms, that if we don't get this political reform passed, that means one person, one vote, the August 31st, 2014 framework, we don't get that passed, we are at a standstill. 2 years ago, you said that. We're at a standstill. Now, that thing didn't pass, as you and I both know. Now you're saying society is not ready yet to discuss political reforms. But that suggests that we will be at a standstill.
No, that's why I said that if we do not have the environment conducive to reaching some form of consensus on political reforms, it is sort of going into another 20 months of abortive work. But what I feel very strongly is, although we are at a standstill now...
So we will be, even if you win, we will be at a standstill because there's no reforms? Well, that's what you said.
Let's put it that way, because although this election is about selecting the chief executive by an election committee of 1,194 members, I have made it very clear in public, and I think other candidates are doing similar things, is to reach out to the people. Because we all realize that for a chief executive to be elected on the basis of 1,194 members, it's not going to give you some very
You're not going to have a
very
wide
comfort
mandate. Yes.
in governing Hong Kong. So we really have to go to the people to get this broad-based support and mandate. But of course, once one of us is elected to become the next chief executive, this urge for democracy will still be there. So we have to watch out and find and perhaps even create environment conducive to tackling this very difficult issue again.
I'm going to ask you how you created. Jasper Chung Yuk-sing, the former legislative president, said at a conference, and I was there, that the first thing we have to do is to deal with political reform, because without that, we will continue to be a divided society. That is the top priority. That's what he said. Do you agree with that?
Political reform. I don't want to interpret what Jasper said, but my usual discussion with him is political reform is not just about universal suffrage in the selection of the chief executive. And it's also about the various institutions, particularly the executive and the relationship between the executive and the legislature. Those political issues definitely will be tackled in the next term of government.
All right, we'll take a quick break. See you soon. Don't go away. Thanks for sticking around. This is Straight Talk with Carrie Lam. Mrs. Lam, before the break you said something that was quite interesting. Yeah. You said with 1,194 votes in the election committee, whichever way you look at it, you really don't have a proper mandate. Therefore, you've got to reach out to the people. And you said that it will be difficult to govern with that kind of an election. Right? So if you win this election, and before you win this election, in the campaign, you will reach out to the people. But does that really give you a mandate, even though you reach out to the people? Because at the end of the day, it's just less than 1,200 people voting for you.
Well, that is a systemic issue that, unfortunately, we have tried to tackle, but we failed. So without going back immediately to that one single political agenda,
you said we should do other
we need
reforms.
To do other things.
Like what?
Political inclusiveness. So in what I said on last Friday at the rally, I said I also want to inject a new style of governance, which is more inclusive, which is more participatory. I also said that we would really go for individual merits in inviting people either into government or to sit on our various boards and committees, so that we were able to get a broad range of ideas instead of just confining ourselves to the views and the comments that we love to hear.
Well, you reach out to the Pan-Democrats and they've said, no, they don't want to have anything to do with you.
No,
How do you be inclusive?
I'm meeting with the Pan-Democratic members of the election committee. I've scheduled to meet with the pan-democratic political parties from this week onwards.
Okay. Now, mandate, that's a very important thing.
Yeah.
Popularity polls show that you lag behind John Tsang. If you win the election with 1,194 people voting and you win it, but popularity-wise, you're not as good as John Tsang, supposing. Does that still give you a mandate?
Well, popularity is something very fragile, as I'm sure you know. You need only one single incident to destroy a leader or a politician. The reason why my popularity lags behind is just natural, because in the last few years I've been dealing with controversial issues one after another, and people really see me as very close to the chief executive. So if the chief executive was not popular, then naturally whoever was very close to him share part of that blame or that pain. But since launching this campaign about 3 weeks ago, and in reaching out to people, going down to the districts and meeting even with the pan-democratic election committee members, I've got the feeling, okay, you can say that I am a very optimistic person, but I do get the feeling that when people know more about me, in terms of my background, my upbringing, my philosophy, and what I intend to do for Hong Kong if I were given a chance as the chief executive, then there's a bit of more endorsement, I would say that.
But are you still saying that even if you don't win the popularity stakes, that you will still have a mandate?
Well, I will continue to build a mandate through practical policies.
But if you don't win, if on election day you get the votes from the election committee, but your popularity is still below your rivals, will you still have a mandate?
Well, because this is, at the moment, the electoral system that is going to return the next chief executive. And I believe that. I don't think it was a black and white issue. It's a matter of degree. Even the current polls indicate a matter of degree, okay, or a matter of percentage points. But I have every sort of preparedness that I may not be the most popular
You're
in this
prepared
campaign.
for that?
Yeah. So I need to work doubly hard, both during the campaign and if I'm fortunate enough to have a chance to become the next chief executive, I will not lose any time in building up a credible team, in implementing implementing policies which will meet people's aspirations.
Not populist policies. Okay, now, you mentioned that you're seen as close to the current chief executive, Mr. CY Leung, and you said unpopular chief executive. Tell me why. You worked with him for so many years, you're close to him. Why is he so unpopular?
I think you have to ask him or other people.
You must have an opinion.
Well, I have an opinion on many persons. I have an opinion on Mr. Michael Chugani, but I'm not going to tell on air how I feel about Michael.
But you're the chief secretary. Why do you think the chief executive, was so unpopular?
No, you cannot.
What about his policies?
You cannot sum it up in one sentence or two about the public perception of a person. Okay,
where did he go wrong?
Over years. Well, as I said, whoever is the leader, he or she has this exclusive duty to communicate, to explain to people, to engage, and to build up that strong sense of inclusiveness in society. And this sort of skills do not come easy.
Does he lack these skills to engage?
No, that is for the public to judge. But I can only tell people, although people said that you, during the campaign, don't mention too much about your chief executive or Mr. Leung. But I have to be fair to him. He works very hard.
Do you think he did a good job?
He works very hard. Well, in terms of many policies.
Was he treated unfairly by the people?
I think whoever wants or has been doing this job as a chief executive has to be prepared for not being treated fairly.
Do you think you'll be called 689 or 689 if you become the chief executive and mocked that way?
In the last 3 weeks, you have already witnessed all those personal attacks on me, stigmatization, labeling, making up stories and following me and things like that. I have to get used to those.
You have to get used to that. Now, the one thing you did say a few days back was we have accumulated this big surplus, huge fiscal reserves, and you said that we have to have a fresh look at how we utilize this for the good of society. Now, that was an indirect criticism of the former Financial Secretary, John Tsang. But the fact of the matter is, you, as Chief Secretary, and CY Leung, as Chief Executive, were part of this government where John Tsang was the Financial Secretary. Are you saying that Mr. Tsang took decisions about how to spend or not to spend any money without any input from the Chief Executive and the Chief Secretary?
No, definitely not. As the Financial Secretary has repeated on many occasions, the budget, especially the expenditure side of the annual budget, is to implement or to provide the resources for the policies. But there is something called a major fiscal sort of framework, how much you could spend, expenditure guidelines, and so on.
But you'll be tied by the same framework.
Sorry?
You will be tied by the same framework.
No,
right?
no. I have been working in the public finance side for 7 years, in 1993 to 2000. I was the official who explained the transitional budget to the Chinese team of officials. I have been tasked with the responsibility to comply with Basic Law 107, that is, you should strive to prevent fiscal deficits and making ends meet. But having regard to all those requirements and the current fiscal strength of this government, I do strongly believe that we have room to invest more in our people.
Well, if you felt that, did you communicate it to Mr. Zhang, or did he ignore your suggestion?
Well, it's not for me to expose the internal deliberations on important matters like the fiscal situation, but I've said in public that in this campaign, of course, winning and losing is important, but I look forward to a very rational debate on some of the key issues perhaps are not very well understood by the people in Hong Kong because they don't have the information. But this time it's very good. We have at least 3 candidates or 3 potential candidates who have worked in the government so many years. So for these 3 persons now taking their respective position to debate,
they understand the government.
Would be very interesting.
My last question, tell me why you think you will be a better chief executive than your closest rival, Mr. John Zhang.
I go back to my 3 key messages. I think I care. I care about Hong Kong.
Does he not care?
I care about young people, and I actually listen, despite some people's attacks that I don't listen. I actually listen. But my strongest strength is I act.
Are you saying Mr. John Zhang doesn't act? Because some people, I think Regina Yip said he was an idle, lazy person.
No, you asked me. I'm telling you my strength.
But what are your weaknesses?
My weaknesses include I have a very soft spot. Very, very soft spot.
Well, does that make you qualified for chief executive?
No, sometimes the chief executive has to make some very, very tough decisions. But if you have a soft spot, you would tend to really display your compassion on occasions which may make you look a bit weak.
Okay, now, you didn't really quite answer about why you think you're a better chief executive than John Zhang.
There's more people to judge, Michael. Although you don't have a vote, you could still judge.
All right, now, I'm going to have to end the show, but before I end the show, I'd like to tell the viewers that we've had Regina Yip on this show, and we've had Judge Wu on this show, and today we have Carrie Lam on the show. All 3 aspire to be chief executive. Mr. John Zhang, I have tried several times to invite him. So far, he has not accepted. Let's hope that he will. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time. Good evening.